part. That was a new one. But we definitely are working on the bicycle helmet law. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Now, others in the audience who wish to talk tonight, sir?
Thank you, Mr. King. I'm Dave Sherman. I live at 190 Gibson Street. And at one of the ward meetings, someone brought up this an accident that happened with a garbage truck on 82 and 71, and I believe no one seemed to know anything about that. So I obtained an accident report, and I thought I'd share it with you. The accident happened December the 27th at a little after noon at Route 82 and 71. The driver was Jeffrey Coleman, working for LT Services. And the offense was a reasonable control and unsafe vehicle. I'd like to read the whole thing here. A tractor trailer loaded with garbage, trailer plate Q005180, was exiting I-71 southbound to State Road 82. The truck was in the left lane, turning right into State Road 82. The driver failed to maintain reasonable control of the unit and made the turn at too high a speed. The trailer began to roll. Soon after the cab followed. The unit overturned onto its driver's side in the leftmost lane. Approximately 8,000 pounds of garbage then spewed out onto the roadway, blocking the westbound lane. Driver and passenger reported minor injuries but refused transport by Strongsville Fire. The impact of the overturning truck did cause some damage to the concrete median, dividing east-west lanes of travel. An investigation by PUCO and traffic crash investigator Farini found that the brakes on both the tractor and the trailer were out of adjustment. This was determined not to be a factor in the crash, although witnesses' account and the technical crash investigation point to speed as the underlying factor. The driver's statement, I'd like to read that. It kind of bothers me. He says, exactly his words, "I was get off on the ramp of Route 82, gonning east. I round the corner, due round 15 to 20 miles per hour, went the truck, pick up the side and turn on its side." The report of the accident, the final report, the results of an inspection of the brakes on the truck and the trailer, they were out of adjustment by 40%, and according to regulations, the maximum out of adjustment limit is 20%. Therefore, the vehicle was deemed unsafe. So the reason I want to share this with you is that this is what we have to look forward to. The citizens of Berea have to look forward to when we get this trash transfer station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Others who wish to address council at this time? Seeing no further desire. Oh, Mr. Cabello? Yes.
My name is John Cabello, Pearl Street. After listening to that traffic report from the driver, it's frightening what's out there in these garbage trucks, and it's frightening that the driver probably had a lower education than most people, and that's what he was doing for a living. Mr. Baker probably can attest that most union drivers and company drivers are strictly regulated. And I know where I work, I am road tested and medically tested and everything else. Mr. Trupel, Councilman King, and council members, Ordinance 11-4 transfer station was presented to council by Mayor Trupo. I'm sorry, Stan. As I said, truck drivers have a hard time reading. The ordinance was first read in November. A lot has happened since November 3rd. Conrail is being taken over by CSX and North Fork Southern. Mayor White of Cleveland wants to reroute most of the train traffic through Berea Also do the mayors of Lakewood, Rocky River, and Bay Village. This is according to the newspaper, and there is an article from Mr. Trupo in there too. I brought that up at the elementary school there at Smith Elementary when we was discussing this. Mr. Trupo, off the top of his head, he said there would be about 200 trains coming through there, through Berea, a day. Believe it or not, there are about 97 trains going through Berea each day now. In the Plain Dealer, Mr. Trupo, or Mayor Trupo, after reviewing it or at the meeting, he was talking to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and Trupo says, White's plan makes sense, but I'm not going to comment until I have further information, which is a smart thing to do. Proposals and counter-proposals outline to date set up to about 120 trains per day going through Berea with Mayor White's proposal. The original proposal, as reported in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, proposed by Conrail and North Fork Southern, showed no extra train traffic coming through Berea, according to this January 28th Plain Dealer. Why does Berea have to be sacrificed for Mayor White in Cleveland? I don't understand this. Whatever the number, 200 trains, 120 trains, or 97 trains, the trains are going to block traffic in Berea. Blocking traffic, and the way that stuff was routed through Berea, it's going to be right where this trash site is designed to be put, where this man is building his restaurant business that used to be between the tracks behind the Kim track. The mayor and the city has been putting out some good stuff, and only positive about this trash relay center or site. They hired outside public relations people to help promote it. When we have these meetings to go, we've been having meetings since November about this trash relay site. At the meeting we had December 8th at the high school, the comment was made: 1% of 40,000 vehicles will be the increase in the traffic for that area. That's 400 vehicles. That has been revised since it was pointed out that it's 400 vehicles to state in the literature that's handed out now less than 1%. Mayor Trupo claims only 130 trucks increased during the 12-hour operation of the site. This is what the mayor and the city is saying now. That's 130 trucks in, it's 130 trucks out. That's 260 trucks additional. What the mayor and the city council, or whoever's pushing this, is not telling you that in the lease agreement, it specifies that this is not only going to be a trace relay station, but it's also going to be a recycling center to be operated by the city or the county. It states right in the lease agreement. This is being downplayed by the administration right now. You take the 260 slow-moving garbage trucks in that area and add the amount of vehicles that this recycling center is going to have, and you're going to have a big traffic jam. Mayor Trupo, my wife and I were at Cleveland Clinic today, We spent 6 hours down there doing various things. And while I was waiting to do one test or another, I happened upon a big plaque of Art Modell. This plaque thanked Art Modell for all the charitable work he did for the Cleveland Clinic. It's a darn shame Art Modell is known for one thing in Cleveland, and that's taking the Browns out of Cleveland to Baltimore. It would be an injustice to you, Mayor Trupo, that after all the good things you've done for the city of Berea, that you would be remembered for traffic jams in this garbage dump, or garbage relay center. I'm sorry. I'm asking all the members of council to vote no on this trash relay station and recycling center. With the extra train traffic that Mayor White wants to route through Berea, it would be reckless and irresponsible for anybody to vote yes on this legislation without having all the facts about the up-and-coming train merger and routes. Please, I urge each and every one of you councilmen and women to vote no on this. All the facts aren't in. Dennis Kucinich, the mayor, and the West Shore or North Shore Mayors Association, Mayor White, they haven't beat this out. This could take a long time. Please do not vote this thing in until you have all the facts from everybody about how many trains are exactly going to come through Berea and what they're going to carry, what they're going to do. I want to thank Council President King, pardon me, Mayor Trupo, and the council and the people of Berea for hearing this. I also want to urge the people of Berea to get the copy of the lease agreement from your city hall. This is a copy of the lease agreement. I believe it's 27 pages. Read the copy of the lease agreement. Get a hold of a copy of the DOT regulations that regulates truck traffic on state routes. And put some effort into this. Study what's going to be put in your city before it's put in here. And I urge each and every person on the council to do the same thing. Please do not rubber stamp this. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, sir. Any further people in the audience? Mrs. Ryland?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Teresa Ryland at 588 Pearl Street. I think almost everybody knows that by now. I called the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta because I'm very concerned about the health of this waste transfer station. And I talked to Dr. McCanahan, who was a very nice person, who told me you won't die from a waste transfer station. Okay, you're not going to get some horrible disease with anything that doesn't stay overnight. He also told me that there was a waste transfer station within 2 miles of his office, and good luck if I could keep this out of Berea, because he couldn't keep it away from his office. And once in a while, he says it's absolutely impossible not for this to happen. He can smell the waste transfer station. Okay? But it's not going, if you remember at the ward meeting, I was concerned about disease and controlling garbage, and you know what we put in our garbage bag. It's all yucky stuff, and I don't want it here. I guess the biggest thing here is the concern for safety with the traffic. I'm not a statistician. I know if you have more vehicles on the road, you're going to have more accidents because there's more people out there to have an accident. There is a possibility of some of this stuff, through no fault of the regulators or the administration, of having some toxic chemicals put into garbage trucks just because people, for whatever reason, throw it in garbage bags and don't dispose of chemicals safely. There is a possibility of an explosion because of whatever people throw in the garbage. And it's illegal to put this stuff, but somebody puts in some bleach, somebody else puts in some ammonia, somebody some turpentine, whatever you have in your basement and garage, and it is dangerous. Now, we're not going to have a Bhopal, India, where one morning 2,000 residents are dead. Okay, remember that Bhopal, India thing? But if you're going to have this waste transfer station against my will, then I would suggest that you get in touch with the River Edge Elementary School PTA and say we're going to have civil defense drills. I grew up with civil defense drills. It is possible to have, it is a possibility, not a big one, of an explosion, of a chemical reaction to whatever kind of stuff people put in there. You can't, once it is in the, it's impossible to open up every single garbage bag and see what's in it. I understand that. And I'm not saying it's a big possibility, but I'm saying, gee, you've got trucks, you're going to have trucks coming in, we're going to have trains going by, and we have an elementary school. I don't know how close it is, within 3,000 feet of this thing. And I don't know, as far as safety goes, and this is an American tradition, maybe a human tradition, we always implement a safety procedure after the accident. And so if you're going to do this, then please take care of the children at River Edge Elementary School. I don't know if you can do anything with the school buses and the garbage trucks being at the same intersection at the same time in the morning and at, 3:30 in the afternoon there at Sheldon Road. But we better have something in place, because it's too late afterwards to have something in place. And I'm very concerned about people's health, because no matter what your problem in life, if you're alive and healthy, you can solve your problems. But if you're sick or if you're dead, you can't solve anything. So I'm still working on this. I still think it's very bad for the prestige of Berea to have the waste industry in Berea, because we're too small a community to handle it. But if you guys go through with it, let's do it right. And let's look at the safety of the traffic and the safety of the chemicals and the safety of the elementary school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ryland. Further discussion, Mayor Kafer?
Jack Kafer, 179 Manning Drive. I've had the opportunity to attend the 4 ward meetings that the mayor and President Council have held. I want to commend both Mayor Trupo and President Council Jeff King for the excellent way that you've handled those meetings under, in some cases, some very trying circumstances. I was at one meeting in particular where every effort was made simply to disrupt the meeting, and Mr. King, I just had to admire your patience in the way you ran that particular meeting. We're all aware that the proposed transfer station is a very, very emotional issue. That's an understatement, and it is fed by real trash, like this piece that was stuck in last week's Sun News, excuse me, signed by a Berea resident, paid for by a Berea resident. person who put this together didn't even have enough courage to put their name on it. And again, statements like, why should you believe it, the Browns leaving town only cost the city a lot of money. And I think we all know, and I don't know how many times Mayor Trupo has explained in how many meetings what the Browns agreement was all about and how tight that contract was and the arrangement with the National Football League, and the list goes on. And as far as costing the city a lot of money, yeah, there was been a loss in terms of income tax revenue, but there certainly has not been anything out of our general fund to subsidize that particular facility. And we're all aware that the Browns will be coming back soon to the city of Berea. But again, it's stuff like that in trash like this that comes into homes that you're up against. And it's things like statements like, everybody read the lease agreement. Well, here's the lease agreement. Every member of council's read this. I've read it. Certainly, I saw the section in there that said that I think it's 1.25 acres was to be reserved for a potential recycling site at some time in the future. I saw nothing in this lease that I had any particular specific problem with, and yet when you wave it in the air and say, let's have everybody read this, the innuendo is that, boy, we're going to really find some bad stuff in here. I think it's unfortunate that the mayor and city council is up against these types of tactics on an issue that's so critical to the city of Berea and the future of what we're going to be doing with our waste, not only next year, 5 years from now, but 10 years from now. And I have a very real concern, excuse me. Mayor Trupo's gone on record a number of times indicating that he thinks it's imperative that we maintain control of our rubbish hauling operation within the city of Berea. And he's given reasons for why he thinks that's important, and that Berea is one of few cities that maintains local control over its rubbish hauling. And I'm very, very concerned that at some time in the future, and it may not be in Mayor Trupo's term and this council's term, but what happens if this deal goes down? You've boxed in future mayor, future city councils, and the reality is going to be that as these landfills fill up and the options continue to reduce in terms of what we can do with our solid waste once we pick it up, I am very fearful that the city of Berea can no longer afford to be in the garbage business, and you're going to have to, excuse me, go out for bids to the 3 top waste haulers in Cuyahoga County: Waste Management, BFI, USA Waste. And I see that in the future, and this is just a personal view of mine, I'm not trying to sound threatening. I see no other recourse, if you want to stay in the garbage business, I see no other recourse than having a transfer station where you got some place to put this solid waste, and some place where the solid waste then can be transferred to landfills out of Cuyahoga County. We've got one left in Cuyahoga County right now. One left. It's got 2 or 3 years on it. Russia Township in Lorraine. That's the other landfill. Waste Management takes now their solid waste out to Toledo. They haul it all the way out to Toledo. Superior Services transfer station is located in Mansfield. And we're getting to the point that if we just don't face up to what the facts are regarding the solid waste problem in this city, we're all going to lose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Trupo. Or Mayor Kafer, pardon me. Additional comments, gentlemen taking the mic, and then Mr. Mustang will go to you next.
My name is Alan Schubert. I live on Barbary Drive. Berea does not use landfill in Cuyahoga County. They transport their garbage to Russia Township, I'm under the impression, and so there's no reason to worry about how long the landfill in Cuyahoga County will last. My main question is, why is the garbage industry the only industry that this administration is trying to attract to this property?
Mr. King,
Mayor Trudeau?
that question is directed to me. First of all, it is not the city of Berea's property. We do not own that property at all. That is owned by Cuyahoga County. And that property has been designated as a site for a transfer station. So I'm not promoting any of those things. It is being promoted, and if we don't do this with the controls of us being partners in this particular project, the chances are that this property is going to be sold anyway, and it's going to end up going to the highest bidder. And since it's already designated as a transfer station site, it's likely that the bidder is going to be one of the transfer haulers. And if that's the case, we have absolutely no say as to what becomes of that property and how the trucks route. Our proposal says that all trucks coming in to that transfer station must use Interstate I-480, I-71, State Route 237, and Sheldon Road. If we do not have control of it, if we do not own that property, then there's no designation as to what way they can come in or what way they should come in. So first, Berea does not own it. Second, I'm promoting the only object left before me. Thirdly, it's a guarantee, as much as life allows us to guarantee, 25 to 40 years of garbage disposal for this community, leaving us in a position of being able to say to our children and grandchildren, being able to say to any newcomer who comes into the city of Berea, no matter what happens with the solid waste cost, we here in Berea have 25 to 40 years of assurances of that being hauled away. On top of that, sir, that also allows us to take just the tipping fee, the $275,000 that we paid for dumping our solid waste last year, not including the inflation rate, nor the repair rate, nor the time out on the road, or any of those factors, none of those. $275,000 is actual tipping fee. That's where we took our solid waste to Russia Township and dumped it. That $275,000 is earmarked for our road program, which we badly need to get on to a $500,000 a year. That's over half. And 65 of that $275,000 will go to a sidewalk program, which so many people have been asking for. Up to this time, the city of Berea has been willing to crush the sidewalks that are damaged and haul them away, and you as the property owner would pay to have the new concrete put in or the new cement put in for a sidewalk. Now we're saying is that we want to take $65,000 a year and do a full citywide program, and it'll take several years to do it at $65,000 a year. I think I may have answered your question, maybe gone a little beyond, but I want to go back to your statement is that I'm not promoting, it's a county-owned facility.
Thank you. Mr. Mustang?
I didn't really come tonight to speak to this, but I do have to say a few words as a resident. I'm Charles Mustang. I live on 246 Wallace Drive at the south end and quite away from the scene of the crime, so to speak. I've been a Republican since I was 16 years old, and that was a hell of a long time ago. So I'm a little uncomfortable supporting the administration, which is resoundingly Democrat in nature, but that's neither here nor there. I think in the will to win that we have when we get into these contests, we lose sight of the fact that the whole thing began with someone trying to solve a problem. And the problem is real. There are very few cities this size anywhere in the country that don't take up their council's times and their mayor's times trying to figure out what they're going to do with solid waste. One of the reasons I love living in Berea are the city services. I like the fact that city employees earning a living come and pick up my garbage once a week and haul it away. I hope that will continue for as long as I live, which will be here in Berea, and I hope that'll continue for my children, who are also residents of Berea. I think the problem that Mayor Trupo is trying to solve and council is wrestling with solving is a very real one. The question of county ownership of that land and the county's freedom to do what they choose with that land is equally real. If a waste disposal site is going to be sited in that particular piece of land, I'd rather the city controlled it than the county, by far, by a huge amount. I can't think of another place in Berea you could put it that wouldn't arouse just as much heat and just as much controversy. But as Truman said, it's your job. Yes, I know, he was a Democrat. It's your job as local officials to do what is best for the city. And if that makes you unpopular, if that means you have to take a lot of heat, comes with the territory. I am at least one resident who will speak tonight to balance the ledger who really feels that there is no other solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. And for that reason, I urge you to move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mustang. Mr. Cole, you had your hand up before.
Thank you, Mr. King. My name is Gary Cole, 315 Parkway Drive, Berea. I also own Cole Excavators on the south end of town. Grew up on Barrett Road on the north end of town, been a resident of this community for 42 years. I'm very much opposed to this transfer station for several reasons, and one comes from Paul McCumbers, as he and I sat and discussed last week on some of the facts on the truck rates. And with the Draft Pro study that we have here, is basing some of my calculations here. Based on Paul's information, we're basically talking about 3 to 5 trucks of garbage coming from Berea per day going to the transfer station. At the same time, we'll be accepting 95 to 97% of outside trash. That's basically 95 to 97 loads. That's at the low end. As per the Draft Pro study, within 20 years, it doesn't say when within 20 years. If it's successful, it may be 5 years from now that we bump up to 2,500 tons per day, in which case we're going to go close to 98 to 99% of outside trash coming from other communities. I know in talking to a neighboring mayor of ours just the other day, I had a discussion about this, and after he got done laughing so hard and told me that if we ever proposed it in his community, they'd tar and feather him and run him out of town. But it was interesting to note that other communities are trying to get transfer stations and can't get them through. So basically what we're going to be doing is accepting everybody else's trash for some outside tipping fees. And to get rid of 3 to 5 trucks per day, that's only a semi-load, maybe twice a week that we have to get rid of. And with Joe Biddlecomb's experience in overseeing a transfer station, I don't see why the city isn't pursuing just getting a hydraulic jack and compacting our own trash and getting rid of it. Certainly would be a study to take a look at. Our trash needs are certainly not as great as the outside interests that are pushing this. And I know the county officials are involved in trying to promote this, which I can't understand if they're not interested in getting the trashing business, but they want to get involved with pushing this through. and hiring outside consultants and stuff like that to oversee this campaign. You know, they have a vested interest also. So the city of Berea is basically being asked to accept trash from outside communities. And I got a problem with that. When you look at the increased truck traffic, no studies have been done on Sheldon Road. I see they studied the intersections of Sheldon and 237, and they studied Eastland and Sheldon, both going that way. But they haven't studied a two-lane highway like Sheldon Road as to the amount of traffic and what the increased traffic is going to be just on Sheldon Road. At the low end, I calculated, based on 1,100 tons per day, you're going to see a truck every 1.3 minutes. Excuse me, on the low end, it's every 3 minutes. And on the high end, every 1.3 minutes that you're going to have a truck of garbage coming down that street. That is a lot of truck traffic, folks. If anybody's ever seen a truck train and what that looks like, it's constant. And they're also saying that it isn't going to be from 6 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. You know, peak hours are going to be like from noon to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and around lunchtime, those garbage trucks are going to have to get loaded. They won't even get over here till probably 9 o'clock in the morning, basically leaving maybe around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you've got a heightened truck traffic scenario right around lunchtime. And we all know truck drivers, and as we watch them, and I use them all the time in my construction business, they don't necessarily take the designated routes. You can't keep them on it. And when there's a Burger King or a McDonald's or a fast food lunch place right around the corner, they're going to be going down Front Street. We know that they're going to be sneaking off to grab a lunch, and you're going to constantly be policing them. And I think our police department has better things to do than to chase garbage trucks all day. So yeah, there are things that we need to take a look at there. I proposed to another mayor the use of some property closer to 71, and had an option, was looking for an option out on some alternatives and stuff like that, and I got a resounding absolute no. Will not even be considered. Even though it was a better site, it was bigger, it was more accessible to 71, and everything like that, it wouldn't even be considered. No other community around here wants this in their community. So I'm questioning why we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Further comments? Lady in the back.
Jesse Schubert, Barberry Avenue, Drive. Mayor, I know that you have a problem with the garbage, and that's a real one. But like he just said, we don't want it in here. I think we ought to think of another concept of going to change the county's designation for that property, because it would affect the county far more if there were truck accidents with the garbage strewn all over and people are trying to get into the airport. Safety-wise, we have visiting dignitaries coming into Cleveland Clinic through the airport. It may be in another community, but it will be Berea's garbage that affects them. I think our efforts would be far better tailgated using that as an idea to change the county's view of what they want to do with the property, and possibly, conceivably, putting that property in our name and doing something else the county needs that would be less destructive for airport traffic, for our traffic. I mean, I think you said something at one of the meetings that we don't take care of Sheldon Road or Eastland or 237, so that all that truck traffic on there, when they decide, when they're good and ready, and then since it's not in their corner of the territory and they don't see it, it won't be a priority on their agenda, but it does affect ours if we're going through. I think our actions would be far better directed in changing the county's designation of that property and finding other uses for it. Granted, you have a valid problem on garbage, but like he just said, other communities do not want it. The amount of people affected on this one in our community, at Strongsville, they can build houses after the fact. They still have the space. We've already got the airport traffic. We've already got other traffic that's there from other businesses. We're here first, and we don't want it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. King. Mrs. Schubert, the county owns the property, as we've stated before. The state of Ohio has designated and approved the site for the transfer station. The Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and the health officials have indicated the safety of that area. So it's more than just county that we're talking about with regards to that. The state is also involved. I don't recall, there are 11 communities throughout Cuyahoga County that have transfer stations, and none of them have been noted for being the dumping capital of the world. Rocky River has one, Strongsville has one, Cleveland Heights has one, and I don't know where the other ones are, but there are several throughout the county. So it's how you use these facilities and treat these facilities. Let me extend to you and to anybody else the opportunity to go visit a transfer station. You don't need to go with anybody from the city, but if anybody would like to go with a city member, we'll be happy to take you. Otherwise, those of you who would like to go on your own to visit it at whatever time that you'd like to, please feel free to do so.
You said 11 communities had transfer stations. How many of those are active? And I have followed garbage trucks into other communities in by Oberlin. I've almost been hit by debris. I've almost been in an accident when one guy slid into me when the roads were bad. This is what I'm dealing with, and this is why I'm negative. I've had personal experience being around those trucks and traveling. And it's not something in this congested area. We already have accidents when the weather turns bad on 480. But the question was, how many of those are active in those 11 communities that you said?
I believe all 11 of those, Mrs. Schubert, are active at this time. I don't know of any that's been put on an inactive.
Mr. Miller?
Well, I've been listening to a lot of the discussion about the transfer station, and I thought everyone was putting a lot of good points across. I thought of the pros and cons. I've listed all the arguments. And I've got to say that the arguments against it are much stronger and based on more fact and are more sound than the arguments for it. Mr. Cole stole a lot of my thunder that I was going to talk about tonight. I feel that the transfer station is a very bad idea for all of Berea, not just the north end. I don't live at the north end. But Berea, I hope, is perceived as a small, comfortable, cultural center, and not one that'll have an image of a destination for 130 garbage trucks coming from throughout Cuyahoga County, with all the congestion, noise, dirt, and odors that entails. Berea will become synonymous with that, synonymous with the fact that we would accept it. When you really step back, and what got me when I put it in perspective, as Mr. Cole said, in order for Berea to dispose of 3 truckloads of garbage, 3 truckloads, which in minutes can be transferred down to Strongsville in minutes and disposed of in the most rational manner possible. No. Berea elects to go into the garbage business to make money. As Mayor Trupo says, to help your sidewalks, pave your streets. Berea, you'll pay a big price for every ounce of that blacktop that gets put down in those streets. A much bigger price than you're going to pay for disposing of 3 truckloads of garbage. If this council thinks for themselves and really analyze this, this is a bad thing for Berea. very bad. And I just could not help but express those views and implore this council to vote this thing down resoundingly for the betterment of our entire town. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miller, your address for the clerk's record.
I live on Prospect Street.
Prospect. Further comments, sir?
I'm Dave Sherman. I live at 190 Gibson Street, and I didn't intend to speak again, but as I sat here and listened to the proponents of this trash transfer station, some people, you know, are just really, the ideas that come out of this just don't make any sense. It's a typical liberal agenda to create a crisis. And that's what's happened here. The mayor and you people have created this trash crisis. There isn't any trash crisis. You talk about what's going to happen 10 years or 25 years from now. With the technology that's advancing every day in this country, I have great confidence in the free enterprise system that there'll be a solution for garbage. We may be shipping it into outer space in 25 years. So this whole idea is just nonsense. We don't have a crisis. So let's do what's right for the citizens of Berea and continue to truck that garbage somewhere else. Thank you.
Mr. Cabela?
John Cabela, 481 Pearl Street. I want to bring up something Mr. Cole mentioned. At these meetings we've been having, the city police cannot stop any one of these garbage trucks on any state road, any place in Berea. It's a state law, and I'm sure Mr. Baker knows that. They have right-of-way. Mr. Trupo has even said that at the meetings. I have asked him, can the Berea police stop, ticket, detain any of these garbage trucks for driving on Berea streets? Will they be fined $500? Mayor Trupo's answer was no. They will not be fined $500. The garbage trucks can't be stopped or deprived. Every day garbage trucks from Waste Management come down here from Strongsville. Every day garbage, there's over 100 accounts from just Waste Management alone in Berea. There are almost 200 counts of BFI in Berea. They can take any street they desire and the police cannot ticket them. And if I am wrong, I'm not wrong. Just, you know I'm right because you admitted I was right before. They can't do anything to these trucks. I beg this council not to rubber stamp this legislation. All the facts are not in. Berea should be known as an educational community, not a trash business. Garfield Heights used to be called Garbage Heights. My God, don't do this to Berea. The Berea residents don't deserve it. And you council members, please study that legislation, 11-4. It sits there, it contradicts itself, and it out and out doesn't mean a lot. After 6 months, solid waste or not solid waste, the hell with it. I'm done. I'm talked out. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Trupo?
Yeah, thank you. John, I have it readily and will admit before you this evening that garbage trucks cannot be ticketed by our police department, but they can be ticketed at the site at which they are tipping. And that's the site that we, the city of Berea, owns. Now, I've said that, and you've gotten up at the mic and have made that statement again for the purpose of misinforming the public. The infer fact is that any truck contracted to go to the transfer station on Sheldon Road will be ticketed if they come in off of any of the other streets. Any truck going to Strongsville can't be ticketed. They have the right-of-way, but they're not under the agreement that we have. And speaking of the agreement that you keep referring to the contradictory statements in there, I told you at one of the other meetings, we've had 4 meetings, ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, and this keeps coming up, but it doesn't seem to matter because we're going to say these things no matter what we feel. If you think I'm so ignorant, if you think I am so stupid as to put in one set of papers one comment and in another set of papers another comment, the fact of the matter is there is no contradictory statements in either of those documents. One is a synopsis, one is the full legislative legalese part of it that we have to put on the floor. I must tell you again, John, I respect you as an individual. I don't respect the fact that you continue to spout the same things knowing full well that we've already covered all of those, legitimately covered all of those, and have covered all of your concerns. I invite every citizen. We sent out 8,000 letters to every single household in this city inviting them to come to the open meeting. We've had somewhere around maybe 300, 400 max out of those. That doesn't mean the rest of the people of this city are lethargic or don't care. Maybe it's an endorsement that this body of legalized people sworn in to do the job that Mr. Mustaine talked about us doing. Maybe they're satisfied that we are performing all functions according to their desires. It's time that we back off of this. I don't like the idea any more than maybe some of you, but it's an assurance for this town. It does guide us. It does allow us to have a say. I don't know what Mr. Cole is talking about. He gets up and says, I talked to this mayor and that mayor and Mr. McCumbers, people who aren't here. He talks about a possible site closer to 71. I don't know if he's talking about his site. I don't know any of these things. All I can tell you is what I do know. And the fact of the matter is, we have presented to you a program that we think is absolutely solidly as well as anything can be presented. There are no shortcomings. If we take our garbage to Strongsville, all these trucks will run down Prospect through the city of Berea. Strongsville makes money, and Berea pays them. Berea pays, that's 3 to 5 Berea trucks. What happens to Olmsted Falls? Maybe they're going to go to this place too. Maybe somebody else is. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not in the habit of feeding you a line. I've been in this seat 11 years. You see what our track record, and mine, not only mine, but this council. You call it a rubber stamp, I call it a clear, sound judgment group of people who knows what's right, what's wrong, and does the best that they can. Mr. Mustaine, I call on those statements again. If it's too hot for any of us, we shouldn't be sitting here. I agree with that 100%. But I'm going to tell you, John, and everyone else, I invite you to the meeting on Tuesday, that's tomorrow evening, at Fairwood School at 7:30. You don't have to be from Ward 5. You can come from anywhere in the city. We will make our presentations. We will answer every question. We have never dodged a question, fabricated a question, or lied. And that will continue as far as we're concerned.
Thank you, Mayor Trupo. John, just let me read from the agreement that you've asked us to look at again and compare to the literature. On page 2, it says, lessee, that's the company that will run the plant, shall pay to lessor, that's us, the city of Berea, a penalty of up to, but not in excess of $500 for each violation by a hauler of its obligation to use the required routes. Now there's where it says it. Now the process is that the Berea police are not going to give that truck a ticket. They are going to report it to the company. The company will note the number of the truck, the city that it came from, and will assess that city the $500 fine that, when collected, it will go to the city of Berea. Now, we've tried to explain that at the meetings, but you're asking us to quote directly from the contract now instead of the synopsis, so there it is. And John, you said earlier that you're very concerned about where it says about a recycling site. Let's see what it says there. It says the recycling site shall be operated by the city of Berea, and only the city of Berea has the right to decide if a portion of that land would ever be used for a recycling site. The control is entirely ours. We decide if there would be some instance where we didn't want to continue our recycling at the service garage where we currently do it. We've built in an option for ourselves. But it's our control. The company cannot come to us and say, we are expanding to be also a recycling site. All right? The portion of the site which is depicted in the site plan and which shall in no event exceed 1.5 acres shall be reserved for a recycling center to be operated by the city or the county or its designee. Our control, okay? So, you know, if you raise that question again tomorrow, you feel free to. But there's the answer that you didn't hear Thursday night, and that we went back and looked to make sure that the language was exactly as we thought it was. The city of Berea and the city alone shall decide any expansion of that plant into the area that might include recycling. Mr. Sponsor?
Mr. King, with respect to the quote fine that you had discussed and the point that Mr. Cabela also had brought out, the language that you read makes it, imposes the fine upon the, would be superior or the operator of the transfer station. The city would not be chasing after ABC hauling, whoever it may be. It'll be up to the operator of that transfer station to recover whatever the appropriate fine would be from ABC hauling. So we don't have to chase anybody around. It's the operator's responsibility and how they want to assess that. And the fine would be high enough that it would be a deterrent, obviously, to anybody hauling anything through the city. The other item, of course, is they would not be permitted to travel through residential areas or non-truck routes that we had talked about. Thank you.
Mr. Sponseller, the mayor said just a few seconds ago, or a few minutes ago, that these trucks will be ticketed. There's a difference between being ticketed, ticketing the driver, than assessing a fine at the transfer site. This is a multi-million-dollar business. If they can afford to give us Berea the kind of money they're going to give, a $500 fine is about like, geez, swatting a flyer. These guys spend that on a meal. Now, Mr. Spot, and to get back what you said about this recycling site, Mr. King,
Yes, sir.
it's reserved for a recycling center to be operated by the city or the county. I don't know what copy you're looking at where it says by the city of Berea.
You just said it, sir, the city.
The city or the county. I'm sorry. It doesn't say exactly what you said.
We have the right to determine if we would operate it ourselves or perhaps...
No, the county has the right to determine.
Mr. Sponsor to interpret that.
Mr. King, yeah. Again, keep in mind the site itself is a county-designated transfer station location. The city would own the entire parcel. As part of the negotiations, not only with respect to the haul route, the question of keeping the options open for the city as well as the county for recycling had also been discussed. There are no plans with respect to the recycling center, but the city would have control over the operation of that in conjunction with the county. It simply would not, if it ever would occur, the thought being that a recycling center simply for the city of Berea would be somewhat short-sighted, where you would want a recycling center for other areas as well. But the city would retain control over the property itself, be the owner of the property as well. With respect to your comment about ticketing, I don't know if you can call it whatever you want. The bottom line, you can call it a ticket. It's not a traffic citation like if you crashed a stop sign or went through were caught speeding, something along those lines. No points are assessed on the license. It's a contractual agreement whereby if one of the haulers goes to the site in an area other than the designated route, the the operator can be fined up to $500 per truck. The operator then would have to collect whatever money he wants to from the hauler. But that $500, you can call it a ticket, you can call it a fine, you can call it an assessment. Bottom line on it is, it's intended to be significant enough that it's a deterrent to any prospective hauler to go beyond that route. Now, I think one of the things that came up in one of the ward meetings last week was the question of whether $500 is enough where a second offense of the same hauler would arise. That's one of the items that we'll go back and discuss with the operator that we'll negotiate through. But it may be that that is insufficient, and that's something that we're going to have to confirm. But at this point, based on preliminary indications, the $500 was felt to be a deterrent. Maybe we need it a bit stronger. We'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Mr. Sponsiller, to address this, it's in the language, a ticket. Mr. Baker will verify this as a truck driver. I get a ticket, well, please, let me finish. I get a ticket for driving recklessly. My company isn't going to pay that. Mr. Baker's company isn't going to pay that. But what you stated just now, that this garbage truck can drive any place it wants, and that driver will not be ticketed, but the owner of that truck or the site will be ticketed $500. That is a big difference than finding a guy that's making $12, $13 an hour driving a truck or by mileage, finding him $500 than it is finding a multi-million-dollar company. So in the future, I wish the mayor, and when promoting this, would refrain from using the word ticket, because it's not a ticket, it's not a traffic citation, and you know this, and the mayor is implying that it's actually a ticket when the operator of the transfer or the relay station is going to be fined. And then only if he's reported. And after 2-3 years, people get tired of reporting garbage trucks because nothing gets done.
If I might, Mr. Cabello, perhaps we can continue the dialogue, but I know that you were at most of those ward meetings, and I know that at least one that I recall last week, the mayor said precisely what you had indicated with respect to the word ticketing, that you can call it ticketing, whatever you want to call it. And you were there. You know what he said. He said that it's not a traffic citation as such. There's a $500 fine. You can call it, it's a fine, an assessment, whatever you want to call it. There is a penalty provision in the lease agreement where if someone violates that triangle of roads, that the operator is subject to that $500 fine. The operator then will then have to take whatever measures he chooses against that particular hauler to recover that $500. And if that occurs, obviously it's a deterrent to that business to continue to operate that way where they're being imposed that $500 fine. But, you know, a rose by any other name, my friend. You can call it a ticket, you can call it an assessment, whatever it is. There's an assurance in there that protects, that requires a specific haul route, that protects the people to keep those waste transfer haulers on that specific route.
Mr. Sponsor, this will be the last time, and I'm going to sit.
Mr. Baker has a response first, if you'd care to wait for his.
Thank you, John, my fellow brother Teamster of 407. 25 years I've got driving, and I'm sure you've got as many as I have. One thing, John, you're forgetting, and I know you know this, is that we have a dispatcher that we answer to, and if that dispatcher tells me to stay off a particular road, I know better than to do it. I know I'm not going to get a ticket if I were to, you know, because of the law says I can do it, but if the dispatcher tells me to, sometimes that's stronger than the law, and I'm sure you have those same places that you go. And for instance, over here at Rini Rigo, they don't want us backing the way we used to. They want us coming down the alley along the back of the store and then backing into the dock. Whether they can give our drivers a ticket there, we've had our police, I know, that have talked to the drivers and told them, don't do this again, which they have done. But nobody's gotten a ticket. But yet we know when we leave that terminal how, how we're supposed to go. And they give us directives as to what we're supposed to do. And they put up flyers at our workplace telling us, don't use this road. For instance, if there's a bridge out, they'll tell us how to go around. They'll detour us around. And, those things are important as well, John. Thank you.
Mr. Baker, you're a union driver and a company driver. You're regulated by rules and regulations. There's many drivers that are union drivers, company drivers, and everything else, that if they're told to pull overweight loads, they do it. And you know it as well as I do. And you know there's drivers out there that will do whatever they want, whenever they want, and there's no regulation on them except for traffic violations or firing him from the company. Now, Mr. Sponseller, being a lawyer, I'm sure you understand the importance of the way things are worded. I mean, if you've ever done a divorce case, one word can cost your client $1 million if they have that kind of money to pay. One word can cost this city a bunch of money. A rose is a rose is a rose. I don't want to hear that from a legal director who represents the city of Berea. I want to hear, they will not do this, they will not do that. Now, a ticket's a ticket, Mr. Sponseller, and you know the importance of wording. So, I don't know why this is a small issue with you. This is very important, the way this whole contract is worded. And I'm sure you was involved in most of it.
Mr. King, the contract is worded properly, John. It's maybe saying ticket instead of agreement or citation instead of whatever it is. The agreement is in place. It's in black and it's in white. There is an agreement that says that they don't. We'll be talking with whomever the transfer station operator is, and we'll be saying we want to escalate that cost because I think that makes sense. I really do. But I don't know of any multi-million-dollar corporation that throws money away. I truly don't. So if their drivers are going to be fined $100 or $500 or $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever it is, that's an impact on anybody. So maybe one does it, but not. It won't continue. Just won't continue. You wouldn't allow it to continue if that were your company.
But Mr. Mayor, the drivers aren't getting fined. The transfer site itself is getting fined, and you just did the same thing I was talking to Mr. Sponseller about.
I did.
You said the drivers are going to get fined. The driver's not going to get fined. The relay station's going to get fined. Please start saying the relay station's getting fined.
No, John. Am I wrong? It's not. Transfer station is not getting fined. They're imposing that fine on them.
Yeah, Mr. King, Mr. Cabela, the transfer, it'll be up to the transfer station operator to impose whatever fine or whatever assessment, whatever word you choose. We can call it a rose if you like. Whatever you want. Impose whatever fine, I'll use the word fine, upon that operator. If the city imposes a $500 fine upon the transfer station, the operator of the transfer station, they will then impose whatever fine they choose upon the hauler, that particular hauler, okay? So that if it's a one-time hauler that violates the haul route, and we can never find that hauler, we're still going to collect that $500 fine, or up to that $500 fine. Understand?
I understand perfectly, but the whole thing of it is, the transfer station has to go through litigation to recoup its losses of that $500 from the private company that brings the trash in there. Am I right or am I wrong? Am I right or wrong, Mr. Sponseller?
Well, if they have on the back of their bill of lading, excuse me, Mr. King, if I may, if they have on the back of their bill of lading that a particular haul route will be processed or followed, and the bill of lading indicates that in the event they fail to operate on that particular haul route, and the bill of lading then goes on to say that there would be a $500 penalty imposed upon that hauler, and that bill of lading becomes a contract then between the hauler and the transfer station. We don't care about that. We're not going to chase after the particular hauling company. we are going to hold the transfer station operator responsible for anybody coming into that location to make certain that they follow the particular haul route. And if they fail to follow that haul route, it's the operator of the transfer station that's being held responsible so that we can collect that. The operator is not then going to simply pay over to the city of Berea by allowing these people to violate that haul route.
Well, that is exactly what I said when I first got up here, and you just repeated it. There's an awful lot of ifs, ifs, and ifs. Lawyers don't deal in ifs, and you know it. I can't deal in ifs in the union. I have to sit there and say, this guy is supposed to do this at this time. He didn't do it. Why'd you fire him? This is what happens. You knew you were supposed to do this. Why didn't you do it? Yes, but you're fighting. You're not stopping the trucks from going down the road anyway. All you're doing is continuously taking money from the relay station. He's got to litigate or ban the operator, the company, from the transfer station.
Bingo.
And our only concern, Mr. King,
If he so desires. For $500, I'd let the trucks in. I'm going to sit down. This turned into a debate.
John.
I got to save some for tomorrow.
If we let you talk longer, John. Mayor Kafer.
Jack Kafer, 179 Manning Drive. I have a question for whoever's been keeping track of those people who have signed up and taken advantage of wanting to see not only the transfer station but the proposed site. As of the 4 meetings that we've had, how many people have actually signed up?
Mr. Jarvis, you probably have that.
Mr. President, Mr. Kafer, as of today, I have 1, which I'll be taking tomorrow morning.
Okay. I would like to suggest, and I know we've asked in these group meetings that we've had, these ward meetings, how many people have actually seen a transfer station in operation, a working transfer station, and typically we've had, I think 10% would be on the outside of people raising their hands. I just think it's very unfortunate that we take positions, we dig our heels in, and frankly, we don't know what we're talking about. We don't know what a working transfer station is. We've got one in Strongsville, operated by Waste Management. It's a transfer station that, as the one school bus driver indicated in his letter to the Sun News, that he'd driven a bus down there for years taking baseball teams and didn't realize that this was a transfer station. He talked to other bus drivers. They didn't realize it was a transfer station. And I just don't know how how we can come to grips with this issue if the people opposed to it really don't know what they're opposed to in terms of what a working transfer station is and how it operates. And I think it's unfortunate that you go to 4 meetings and that you had one person sign up, and particularly concerning the number of vocal people at all those meetings. I just want to make one other comment. You know, we can talk about semantics and what's in a word and so forth. I talked to a neighbor of mine regarding this issue on Sunday, and he said to me, you know, I'm really glad that Stan is trying to address this problem. And he said, you know, Stan, if he wanted to, he said, for the next 2 years, and assumes that he wants to run for another 4-year term, could probably coach for the next 6 years and not stick his nose into this fight. and go to work at 9 and come home at 3. Now, I'm sure some of the directors sitting there would wish that once in a while Stan would do that. But that's not Stan's temperament. Our mayor, and he didn't create the crisis, and in 1991 he had enough foresight to say we've got to address this problem. He puts together a group of people, including some of the councilmen here. They looked at all the available technology today. We don't know what's going to be out there. I'll agree, 10 years or 15 years or 20, but we know what the reality is today. And for a mayor to sit on his hands on the basis that I'm going to ignore this problem because maybe 5 years or 10 years from now there'll be some technology that's going to take care of it is not the kind of mayor I want in this town. And I'm just darn glad that we've got a mayor that's willing to tackle the tough issues, stick his nose in, and take the heat.
Oh, let's see, gentleman in the back. Well, wait, let me give Mr. Kwiatkowski. I try to give first-timers a go first, and his hand went up, and everybody else is a repeater.
Tom Kwiatkowski, Ward 2, Parkno area. I'd like to address council and the mayor. It's a great thing that you're doing here. The statistics of the transfer site, economically, it's very good. There's good money in it for the city. It's zoned for it. Why am I against it? It isn't even in my ward. Reason why is one of the flyers said maybe put on the Bagley corridor, which then would be in my backyard in Ward 2. And why I'm against it is that I have the discernment that I'm not being fibbed or lied to. But when I got off my chair in November, first time in 57 years to come something active like this, in Berea, you're sitting out there tonight, get out your duffs, get off your couches, and go to that meeting tomorrow night with Mr. Trupo. These people have worked hard for it. Now, why am I against it? In November, there was a person up here that was selling brown shirts for the Browns. I don't know his name. And he said he was selling, he didn't even know the price of the jerseys, and he says the Browns were for it. When I seen that, I was being buffaloed. There is no Browns. How can he give an answer for the Browns if we don't even know who they are? I got the discernment, my being buffaloed. I don't know if you know what buffaloed means. Pushed over. And I hate those kind of politics. And there's a few other things. I don't want to get into them. But I know why I didn't run for council in the city, because I could not take it. Because if you council can vote for this, which is a good thing, economically it's great, but you have the conscience, a third of Berea will be against you. You have to look these people in the face. And I could never do that. And that's why I'm not sitting where you are. I could never do that. Because I would like 100%. That's impossible, I know, in politics. But I could never do that. So, think about it. It could get ugly. But I would like the city to get this over with in 1 month, because it's costing me money. Thank you.
Thank you. This is, let me call on Mrs. Cabela. She hasn't had a chance yet tonight either. I'm sorry, sir. I know I gestured toward you, but this first timer's popped up.
Joyce Cabela, Pearl Street. I just want to say that I've seen the mayor's presentation many times of the transfer station, and I think he did a good job of presenting it, along with his charts and the questions and the answers that he answered for the people. And I think it is a very idealistic view of the transfer station, and if it was as good as he says it is, we wouldn't have people opposing it. And we probably would have it built by now. And obviously there are people opposing it, and I've seen it at every meeting, and the people are angry. I think that the people that did object to it gave us an objective view of what might be, and it has a lot to do with the safety and the health of everyone. Not only of Berea, but of their families, and anyone that comes to Berea, or the IX Center, and anywhere. Safety in the traffic, the safety in bringing ambulances through the city, fire trucks. It all jeopardizes the safety of everybody, because this will just increase the traffic. And no matter whether the city puts the transfer station there or the county transfer station puts the transfer station there, it's still not a good idea, and we'll still fight for it, no matter what. And I also think that we all have had the opportunity to sign a contract, and I'm sure that we read everything before we sign it, especially if it involves a lot of money. And I agree with reading this agreement, that I think everybody should read it. Because as Mayor Trupo said, we don't want to misinform the public. So I think it is a good idea that the people that oppose it make us aware of what could happen if this does pass and we do build it. And then later on we will say that too bad that we agreed to put the transfer station there, because everything that everybody's been saying negative about it really did happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. King.
Let me say this. I'm going to recognize this gentleman, and then I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, and when we return, we're going to address our legislative bulletins for tonight and our agenda. So, sir, you'll be our last speaker tonight, and then if anyone here wants to continue this, we'll be at Fairwood School tomorrow at 7:30, and we can proceed with this discussion.
Alan Schubert, Barbary Drive. Under the terms of the lease agreement, can the company that operates this transfer station buy the land from the city?
Mr. King? Yes, they can, if council so is willing to sell it to them.
And if they buy it from the city, what control would the city have over the land or the operation anymore?
The same as we would have as if the county took it over, and that's none.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will take a 5-minute recess, and when we return, we'll proceed through our legislative agenda. Order. And we're going to begin with our legislative agenda. The clerk is ready. We have for third reading agenda item B. Will the clerk please read the title?
Ordinance 1-2, an ordinance accepting the donation of vacant real property off Bagley Road from Douglas Barr, per parcel 363-33-001, and Liliana Chanda and Pascu and Dorina Ginga, per parcel 363-33-021, for purposes of constructing a public right-of-way extending Berea Industrial Parkway and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Baker's moved adoption.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Fulamini. In the absence of Mr. Airy, who's out of town, just let me report that this legislation was introduced on the 1st of January, had second reading on the 20th, went to a work session on the 12th where we were informed that this donation of land is to extend a road that runs parallel to Bagley Road on the south side of the annexed territory along Bagley Road. The donators are giving that so that the road can be constructed and add to the sites to be developed in that area. The cost of putting up this additional piece of highway will be $150,000, which the city is obtaining in a grant from the state of Ohio. So it was reviewed at the work session and recommended to council that it be passed, and it's here tonight for third reading. Further discussion on this ordinance? Mr. Miller?
Discussion. There will be no expenditure on the part of the city of Berea.
Question directed probably to Mr. Biddlecombe.
On the land? No. No expense by the city of Berea.
Okay, or on the subsequent development.
No.
All paid for by the grant.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Further questions? Seeing no further questions, I'm sorry. Thank you. I understand. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on adoption.
Malat?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Polino?
Yes.
Fulameni?
Yes.
Key?
Yes.
Ordinance 1-2 passes. Turning now to items for second reading. Ordinance 1-3, agenda item C. Will the clerk please read the title?
Ordinance 1-3, an ordinance designating public depositories of active deposits and declaring an emergency.
Mr. King,
Mr. Blatt.
I'd like to refer ordinance 1-3 to the work session of Finance Committee, to work session of February 9th.
Mr. Malat has moved that the ordinance be referred to the Finance Committee. Motion for referral. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Miller. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, this is the first piece sent to committee tonight, and I'll announce to the public that our work sessions are held on normally the second and fourth Mondays of the month, and this one will be held next Monday at 7:15 in these chambers. Turning now to ordinance 1-4, agenda item D. Will the clerk please read the title?
Ordinance 1-4, an ordinance designating awarding for interim deposits and declaring an emergency.
Mr. King,
Mr. Malat.
I'd also like to refer ordinance 1-4 to the Finance Committee meeting at the work session February 9th.
Mr. Malat has moved referral. Is there a second? Mrs. Key. Discussion on the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion, the ordinance has been sent to the Finance Committee. Turning now for items on first reading, agenda item E, ordinance 2-2. Will the clerk please read the title?
Ordinance 2-2, an ordinance determining to enter into an agreement for the establishment of the Ohio Telecommunications Network Council, authorizing execution of that agreement and actions related thereto, and declaring an emergency. Item E authorizes the city to join a council of governments to further study the feasibility of a telecommunications network.
No motion for discussion. Mr. Baker has moved discussion. Seconded by Mrs. Fulamini. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Mayor, we had the gentleman here at the last meeting to discuss this proposal for joining this network, a regional government to establish and operate a telecommunications network. This piece is, well, why don't you tell us about this piece, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, just to remind all that Skip Dotson was here last week to talk to us about it. It's a group of cities that are going into investigating the telecommunications under ownership of the individual communities, thus possibly providing additional TV coverage, telephone, telephony, I guess it's called, and other telecommunications systems. You'll recall that Mr. Babinski, Eric, was here last week. He came down to talk to us about that. I've talked to Eric, and he has agreed to work with us on this particular project. And we were asked by the group to consider suspending tonight so that we may be listed along with the other communities in the as those being considered for this, without expenditure of funds of any kind. We would have to come back here since there have been no funds designated. We would like to have you consider that, and we could forward it on to Vilas Gamble, the city manager of Bedford, and to Skip Dotson, the consultant on the process, and then we would ask Mr. Bobinski at some point whenever and see if he's available to help us out with it.
Thank you. I happened to mention it to Mr. Mustang, who had previously served on the city's cable television team, and he was kind enough to come tonight in anticipation of this being on the agenda. And what I'm wondering, I'd like to see Mr. Mustang involved in this also.
No problem.
And I'm wondering,
I would welcome it.
What shape is this taking? Is it going to be some sort of a work group, or is it going to be done within the context of our work sessions? How do you see us getting more information about this?
Our group will have to participate with Mr. Gamble's group, and most of those meetings take place in Bedford. I don't know how often, but I think that I don't want to be a conduit in that. I want to be able to hear back from what Chuck and Eric or might say, and Greg would have to be part of the process because of the legal requirements up front, but outside of that, I would look for this to become a citizen's activity.
So what you're suggesting then is you're going to form some sort of a study group to then get into this in more detail and then report back to you and the council after they examine the features of all this prior to the city considering involving themselves in a monetary fashion?
Yes, we don't want to become involved until we know the full ramifications. And I think people with the expertise, as Chuck and Eric have, they can give us that kind of guidance we need. We know what we have in the legal requirements. Greg has all of that, and we'll participate in that part of it. But I would like, if Chuck would do it, and I'd have to call Eric again to see if he would be willing to give us that time. But I don't know the business, Chuck.
Mr. Mustang?
Well, it's very early times, and what you're talking about is doing a feasibility study. On the face of it, the technology is not some far-out, pie-in-the-sky thing. It's pretty well-established technology. It's off-the-shelf technology in most cases. I think most of the questions that council needs to be concerned about are, let me see if I can put this in simple, non-technical terms, because that's the only way I'm going to understand it. The proposal is essentially to build an information railroad track, okay? And as near as I can determine, the revenue stream for the proposers will be in renting or leasing access to that backbone to various cable companies, telephone companies, et cetera, et cetera. They will not be providing services themselves. They're not another cable company. The issues that I can see coming up pretty quickly, if there's going to be a revenue stream, they've got to be the only game in town. And that means we get involved with Ameritech and Cablevision and our contractual obligations to them, and whether there will have to be reimbursement for de-installing the lines they currently have in the city, and if so, who pays for that? Those are the kinds of issues that, you know, I can see, but I'm not really qualified to address. I think, Mr. Mayor, you and the administration or the council's working sessions are far more competent to judge those questions. But on the question of technical issues, I'd really appreciate the opportunity to hear how they're going to implement it, because that's really the key to, pardon me, to the whole thing. What I've read, the technology looks solid. But as you all know, what an engineer says he can do and what he does is not always the same thing. Thank you very much for your confidence. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I'll take it then, Mayor, that your office will coordinate putting together whichever groups are going to study this. And so let's return. This particular piece of legislation does not commit the city to any money, but puts us on a list of interested cities that they could use in trying to go out and attract other cities. Is that basically what this does? And you're saying there's some...
Well, it also makes us one of the members of the Council of Governance, which gives us...
sort of a charter member.
Yeah, like a charter.
Yeah. And you're saying if we let this go the normal 3 readings, we would miss something there?
Yes, I got a note here that indicates that they have a meeting this coming Wednesday.
And we wouldn't be at that meeting unless we were a member.
Are you going?
Okay, further discussion on this then? So what we have before us is a piece of legislation on first reading. It could stand on first reading and advance through the readings. It could go to cable television in a work session next week, but I don't know. The reason I asked the mayor if he was going to create a special body to study this is if they need some groundwork to do before we address it in any kind of a fashion. And if the real piece of legislation that's going to come to us is going to be the funding piece. Mr. Malat?
Thank you, Mr. King. Mayor, just out of curiosity, I'm not sure why we need the legislation to enter into an organization which is doing basic investigation work to see if it's a feasibility study, right? I don't understand why, even though there's no funding, why there has to be legislation for it.
Because they are going to seek sources of funding, and they want to show the number of municipalities and individuals that are involved in it.
To whom are they going to show that?
Wherever they're seeking the funds. I don't know, Dick.
But being on the, as you say, charter member of this organization, then we are under no obligation to really go forth with this type of a system. You can bail out anytime you want to.
Anytime up till you invest your money. We're free to back out of it.
Mr.
Thank you,
King.
Mr. King.
Mr. Baker?
Would, you said this meeting is this week, Mayor?
It's either this Wednesday or next Wednesday. I'm not sure which, but it's coming up before your next vote.
So someone would not be able to, we're not sure if that person could be back for our work session next week, if in fact it is after the work session, so we'll have no idea what the meeting was about.
Oh, yeah, we would. But they were not invited without the authorization to go forward and represent the city. That's the only way we're being invited. I forget whether there are 8 communities involved with it or more than that.
Okay, so
and
this
each
only,
of them have already done their particular piece of legislation.
so by suspension, we're simply just getting into the meeting.
That's all. No obligations.
It says in Section 3, Mayor, that you're going to be the city's representative.
Oh,
You or a
yes.
designated person.
Well, it's not going to be me, Jeff.
Okay. Well, Section 3 says the mayor is the city's representative in the OTN is authorized and directed. So
it'll be one of Greg's
so your intent
department.
is to use somebody in the administration, not Mr. Mustaine or somebody...
I don't know. If that would work, that would be fine, but at this particular time, I think we need to send our legal people along And if Chuck would like to go or Eric would like to go, there's no problem on our part.
I